Fenrir Greyback is a vicious werewolf. Every month on the full moon, he will turn into a werewolf. He allied with Voldemort during both of the Wizarding Wars. This is the life of Fenrir Greyback. Greyback appears very little in the movies. If you have not read the books, you may not know who I'm talking about. It is this guy. Greyback's childhood is very much unknown, but what we do know is that sometime in his childhood, he was bitten by a werewolf, and he was born in 1945. He only survived because of his magical blood, for a muggle could not survive a werewolf attack. When he was bit, he was infected by the black canterbean, which every victim gets. This disease is what causes a human to turn from a human to a werewolf at the full moon. This transition is very painful for the one who's being transformed and the ones around, because the werewolf has no control over themselves, which can cause to many deaths. The Ministry of Magic created a law that every werewolf has to sign, the Werewolf Code of Conduct. This promise is that no one would be hurt by anybody. This message was coded for they had to be locked up at the full moon. Greyback refused to do this. He thought that he shouldn't be under these restraints, for he did not choose to be a werewolf. Over time, he began to understand that being a werewolf is not a curse, but a gift. He hated everyone who looked down upon him because of his disease. He thought that because of this gift, he would easily be given some power. His only goal was to get the revenge on the Ministry, and to affect as many people as he could. Then he would recruit those who would he have bitten in his army of werewolves so he could take over the entire wizarding world. He would often bite them young so their relationship with their parents would be crushed, so they would be more willing to join his army of werewolves. After several months, what used to be a few werewolves turned into a full army of werewolves, who would full of hatred for regular witches and wizards. When it was about time for the full moon, he would get near his victims, so once he turned into a werewolf, he could easily attack them, turning them into a werewolf. After a while, his lust for human flesh was unbearable, so he didn't just attack people once a month. Now he was attacking people year-round, even if he wasn't in his werewolf state, making him into a cannibal. To be the most efficient, he always kept his teeth and nails very sharp, making it easy to scar someone's body. Even if he was in his human state, because of this disease, his scars that he gave people would be permanent. Around the 1960s, Voldemort began to come to power. Both Greyback and Voldemort wanted to overthrow the Ministry, but just for different reasons. Greyback planned to do this with an army of werewolves. He also planned to do this with Voldemort's army of Death Eaters, but his army at the time was not powerful enough to do this. Voldemort then tried to make an alliance with Greyback. Voldemort promised that if Greyback joined his cause, there would be more victims for him to bite. This promise was very similar to the promise that Voldemort made to the Dementors. Greyback didn't believe in this cause, but he joined him anyways because of the promise that Voldemort gave to him, so he can get an army of werewolves and overthrow Voldemort, his Death Eaters, and the Ministry. Voldemort knew what Greyback was planning, but he also knew that they needed the werewolves on his side to win the war. Because of this, he didn't allow the werewolves to wear the dark mark on their forearm, use Death Eater robes, or were treated like third class. The Death Eaters commonly used the army of werewolves. They would say if they did not cooperate, they would send Greyback after their family and their loved ones. This happened many times, doubling the amount of victims Greyback got, enjoying it even more when the family had kids. One day, for fun, he went after 2 Muggle children. 2 to them being Muggle, they didn't survive the attack, killing both of them. When the Ministry found out about this, they found Greyback at the scene of the crime. Similar to how the Grinch did, Greyback made up a quick story, saying that he was just a Muggle pedestrian. He acted like werewolves were foreign to him. He also claimed not to know what the wizarding world was. The Ministry, thinking that Greyback was a Muggle, they brought Greyback to the Ministry for questioning. Greyback was very angry for how Lyle Lupin described him. Full of rage, Greyback went to Lyle's house. He waited a few hours, then he turned into a werewolf form. He attacked Lyle's son, Lupin. Full of rage, Greyback almost killed Lupin, but before he could, Lyle came in and shot many curses at Greyback, causing him to flee. Greyback had done what he wanted, to get back at Lyle. As the First Wizarding War raged on, Greyback became so known for his werewolf attacks, he got his name on the most wanted list, getting his wanted poster everywhere. Due to this, he had to lie low. He still sent his werewolf army out to attack people, but he could not go or do anything because he had a high chance of being caught. After a few years of lying low, it seemed that they had won the First Wizarding War. This all changed when on Halloween, Voldemort went to go and attack the boy Harry Potter, and he so-called died. When Voldemort fell, he did not really care. What he did care about was the main source of victims that he had was now gone. He was one of the many who did not try to find the Dark Lord, for he thought he was dead. Even with Voldemort gone, he still continued on his quest regardless, still affecting as many people as he could possibly get. During the next few years, the Ministry captured him on several occasions, but never was able to hold him for long. When Greyback was finally turned into a werewolf, he was confronted by Tierra Labuska, the werewolf student. When she went after him, Greyback knocked her unconscious, but some of the other students kept him at bay. The students and Dumbledore captured the 3 werewolves, and they were taken to the Ministry. Surprisingly, in quotation marks, he escaped, but while he was locked up, he lost a huge number of his werewolf army because many of them were locked up. He only had a few werewolves to spare, so he kept a low profile. When Voldemort rose to power in 1995, he broke out many Death Eaters and many of the werewolves out of Azkaban because Voldemort was planning to recruit the werewolves again on his side. When Voldemort approached Greyback, he quickly agreed to be in Voldemort's ranks so he could get endless victims again. This time, Voldemort agreed to let Greyback wear Death Eater robes, but he still couldn't have the Dark Mark. After Umbridge's anti-werewolf law making it almost impossible for any werewolf to get his job, his werewolf number grew even more. Greyback played a much bigger role in the movie than he did in the books. I will talk a little bit about him in the movie, even if it's not canon. Some of the things that are worth mentioning from the movie is that Greyback was one of the Death Eaters that was in charge of kidnapping Mr. Ollivander. He was also one to take down the bridge. Now back to the books. During the Half-Blood Prince, he would stop by checking on the Vanishing Cabinet on the orders of the Malfoys so they could get into Hogwarts later in the year. During that same year, Greyback was ordered to go to the Montgomery's family after the mother refused to help the Death Eaters. They had 2 daughters who enrolled at Hogwarts, one boy who was still at home, and when Greyback arrived, he aimed for the youngest son. Greyback went a little overboard and gave him such severe bites that the boy was taken to St. Mungo's and shortly died afterwards. At the end of the school year, Greyback and a few other Death Eaters went into the Vanishing Cabinet to go to Hogwarts. While they were at Hogwarts, Greyback attacked Bill Weasley, giving him permanent scars on his face. When Greyback was done with him, he went to where the rest of the Death Eaters had cornered Dumbledore. After Snape had killed Dumbledore, all of the Death Eaters fled Hogwarts. When Voldemort took over the Ministry, Greyback got more victims than he could ever imagine because he was the leader of the Snatchers who were trying to find all the Mudbloods. In the movies, it was actually Scarver who was in the place of Greyback. Many of the parts that Greyback had been giving in the books was now given to Scarver. Greyback and the rest of the Snatchers were able to capture Dirks Cresswell, Ted Tonks, Dean Thomas, and the Goblin Griphook and Gornock. Dean and Griphook were captured. Dirk, Ted, and Gornock were murdered while resisting capture. Greyback was led over to the place where Harry, Ron, and Hermione were because Harry said Voldemort's name leading them to him. The trio was captured not before Hermione put a jinx on Harry's face to make it look misshapen. When they found Harry's glasses, they knew this boy was Harry Potter, so they brought them to Malfoy Manor. Greyback found the sword of Gryffindor in Hermione's bag, and Bellatrix attacked him, putting him on his knees. Bellatrix, thinking that the sword was in her vault, she went to go and question Hermione, locking the rest of them up. When Dobby appeared, the trio escaped, and a duel broke out, leaving Greyback on the ground unconscious. When he awoke, he got the feeling of the wrath of Voldemort from letting Harry Potter escape. A few months later, the Battle of Hogwarts broke out. Greyback fought side by side with Voldemort, leading his werewolf army. During the battle, He attacked the girl Lavender Brown. Hermione then shot a spell, making him get launched backwards. When he tried to get up, Professor Trelawney dropped a glass ball on his head, knocking him on the ground once more. When he awoke, Ron and Neville fought him back, knocking him out again. This time when he awoke, Voldemort was dead and sentenced to a life in Azkaban, but this time he was unable to escape. Thank you guys for watching. Like, subscribe, comment. There will be a poll in the top right corner where you can vote of the 5 characters that we have listed there on which one you think we should do a life story on next. And thank you for watching.